Hi, my name is Eva Hall, and this is the Socioeconomic Status presentation for Psychology 535. And we're going to discuss a little bit about poverty and socioeconomic status of our students that most of us teach. We see students on a daily basis, and typically most of us don't really consider what their home life might be like. I know I do, only because it's been brought to my attention over the years of teaching by other teachers and by some of the other students actually that I've worked with, and I really think it's important for all of us to take into consideration what these children have to deal with outside of school, when they leave our classroom. So let's just take a look real quick. Who lives in poverty? In 2012, approximately 21% of all school-age children in the United States were living in families in poverty. That's much higher in the South. 21% is just the average, or 21% is the overall percentage of children in the United States. The average throughout the South was much higher. It was closer to 30%. I actually looked up all of these on the U.S. Census website for another class that I was doing last semester, and I remember a few of the statistics, and I also re-looked them up for this presentation. But according to the U.S. Census, the average, when you figure it up, throughout the South is closer to 30%. I think Kentucky was like 26% or something. But the very highest is Mississippi, with 32%. That's 32% of the overall school-age population living in poverty. That's absolutely astronomical compared to up in New Hampshire, where it's only 10%. One of the other really low states was North Dakota, I think. That could probably be attributed to their low population in the northwestern United States. In the Plains states and the Northern Rockies, there's not a whole lot of population, but the further south we travel, the higher it gets, and I'll discuss that more here in just a minute. But it was lower in New Hampshire, with only 10% of the school-age children living in poverty. That's below the poverty threshold line that was defined sometime in the 1970s. I can't really recall which year specifically. The highest poverty rate, it was higher in African Americans and in the black community, and with Native Americans also. They live on Native American reservations, and they don't have a whole lot of access to outside jobs and outside income like everybody else who lives in America does. So their poverty rate is pretty high too. It's also the highest overall in single mother households, which really is not that unsurprising. Obviously, if there's only one parent in the household, there's only one income, but also women make less overall on the dollar than men do, which is something we really need to work towards to change in this country. So that affects the poverty rate also. I found this map on the National Center for Educational Statistics website, and you can see down here in the South, we are living in poverty compared to the rest, in the Midwest states, and even Indiana and Missouri, which borders us. They're not nearly as bad as we are down here. I'm not sure exactly why the South has us, why our culture is worse overall poverty-wise. I don't have an explanation for that. I know down here along the Mexican border we have a lot of immigrants that come in, and they're not real educated, and they take whatever jobs that they can find, and that affects the poverty rate also. But over here in New England, in the megatropolis area that they call it, you have a lot of people who have 3 and 4 degrees, doctorate degrees, multiple master's degrees, and so they have really upper echelon jobs, and so their poverty rate up there is quite low. That's just sort of to give you a visual. So what exactly does it mean? How does living in poverty really affect you? I mean, you think of poverty, you think of dirt floors and stuff like that, and that may not necessarily be the case, because poverty now and poverty 100 years ago is quite different. It's not just about how much money they do or don't have. It's not just about whether or not their parents make $100,000 a year or $20,000 a year. I mean, that is how it's statistically defined, but when you think about poverty, you also have to think about how that affects every aspect of their life overall. So the lower income correlates with a lower level of education. That's kind of a no-brainer there. If you have a lower education, most of the time you're going to have lower income, because the harder you work in college, supposedly overall, the higher paying job that you're able to attain. That's skewed a little bit in our area with the coal mines, because you can get into coal mining with little or no post-secondary education, and make quite a bit of money. But the coal mining industry, the pay goes up and down, and the work goes up and down. It's just not real stable. So that does skew it a little bit. But the lower level of education is also, you're at higher risk for heart disease. Nutritious food costs more. If you go to McDonald's, a hamburger is 99 cents, a salad is $4.50. So that kind of gives you a guess of how education can really affect your health overall. Also, lower level of education families, socioeconomically lower families, their students, the children in those families acquire language skills more slowly. They may have a genetic speech impediment, or they may have someone at home who doesn't teach them how to speak properly. I hear every day of my life at school, "We ain't got no," and you have to correct them every single time, and you correct them at school, but then they go home and they hear that from their parents, and then you have to explain why your parents aren't saying it correctly, and then the parents get upset with you. So that's kind of a struggle to explain to them why their parents aren't saying the words correctly. But they also need more help in the area of math. Academically, they retain less information overall in the long run. Where I got these statistics from, the APA said that when kids graduated at the high school level, when they're tested, they retain about 4% less, or no, that's not right, not 4% less. They retain 4 grades less information, so they really only retain information back to the freshman level compared to students in a higher socioeconomic area. They retain information, all the way up through high school. So 16.7% have a high school dropout rate on the lower socioeconomic scale. So if your family is not making nearly as much money as, your next door neighbors are, you have a 17% higher chance of dropping out of high school compared to your neighbor down the street who's making quite a bit more money, and their child may only have a 3.2% chance of dropping out of high school. And part of that is a feeling of not belonging. If you go to a high school and you see everybody has nice new clothing or driving a new car and you're still riding the bus, you have this feeling, well, I don't belong here. I might as well just drop out. I'm never going to be successful. I'm never going to fit in. So, what am I doing here? It's pointless. And part of that may also be that they drop out in order to help family pay bills. I've had students who have dropped out of school to get a job and help their family pay bills. They can work at Marketplace and make $8 an hour, $7.50 an hour, versus going to high school where they don't make any money at all. And that could be the difference between their family having electricity or running water, or really nice food compared to no food at all. So that's kind of hard to really explain to your student. Well, you need to stay in school, and in their mind they're very set in the here and now, and well, no, I don't really need to stay in school. I really need to have running water at home. So that's a battle we kind of have to face with our students. So what can we do to help? And obviously, I think we can all, we can all empathize with these students, and it's important that we give them empathy and not sympathy. They don't want us to feel sorry for them, even though we do. They don't want to feel different, and they certainly don't want to feel stupid. One thing you can do, even on a teacher's limited budget, you can provide school supplies, because a lot of these kids, they come to school and they don't have pencil and paper, and they really legitimately do not have the money to buy pencil and paper. You can go to the Dollar Tree and get a pack of pencils. I think it's like a pack of 25 pencils for $1. So, pass those out, and yeah, you're going to go through quite a few, but if you go once a week, I mean, you're talking about, how many weeks are we in school? 30 something, I think. You're talking about $30 a year for your kids to have pencils. And if you want it back, do the shoe thing. I've had several teachers who require a shoe, and before you leave that classroom, you don't get your shoe back until you give my pencil back. So you can also ask your school if there's like a field trip fund for low-income families. It breaks my heart when I see kids, especially little kids, at school who can't go on field trips to see the play or go to the park or whatever, not because they've done anything wrong, but because their family couldn't afford the $10 for the ticket or the $25 for the fee to go on the field trip. And we can't afford that for every student, but your school might be able to come up with a fund for something like that. Ask them, when was the last time you ate? This is the part that really gets me, especially on snow days, because a lot of these kids, more than you would think, come to school on Friday and eat lunch at school, and then they may not eat anything again until Monday morning at breakfast. And you can see when they come in Monday morning, they're dragging because they haven't eaten all weekend. And I know this part from personal experience. Sometimes you have to ask them, did you eat anything? And they may not be honest with you at first, but keep some small crackers or raisins or, anything. Make sure they're not allergic to it, obviously, but anything that's kind of nutrient dense, nutrient rich in your desk drawer, and just kind of, give it to them under the table, sort of, not so everybody sees it, and, maybe let them go to the bathroom and eat it or something, because if you're hungry, you're going to focus on that a lot more than, your math assignment or your history homework. It's hard to focus on schoolwork whenever you haven't eaten in 2 days. And a lot of people don't think about that, but it really is the truth. And whenever we've been out, of school for a week, some of these kids have parents who have to work and they don't have time to go to the grocery store, or they don't have the money. They either have to pay rent or buy groceries. And, if it's snowing outside, you're obviously going to pay your rent and just hope that food appears. Even ramen noodles, if you can send home a pack of ramen noodles in their backpack, they don't have to know where it came from, just kind of drop it in there. They're 18 cents a package at Walmart. Just ask them how their day is going. If you see them and they're kind of bummed out and dragging, just ask them, hey Joe, how's your day going? How's your weekend? How's Uncle Bob? How's he doing? How's your grandfather? That's important. They may literally not have anybody at home to ask them how their day is going or care how their day is going. And you may not have any idea at all what they're talking about, or what game they won, or, what family member is sick, but just kind of smile and nod and say, yeah, I understand. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Pay attention to their feet. A lot of these kids are wearing the same shoes they wore last year, or they're wearing the shoes that are 2 sizes too big that their brother wore last year. I had one student in particular who kept taking his shoes off in class, and his feet were not the most pleasing odor-wise, so, I kept telling him, please put your shoes back on, and he finally told me, he was like, I can't. They're too small. They're 2 sizes too small. I can't. They're hurting my feet. So I went out to Walmart and bought him, a $20 pair of tennis shoes and stuck them in his locker, and he may not have known where they came from. He may have figured it out, but either way, he's got shoes. And you don't have to do that for your students. I'm not saying that, but, kind of pay attention and see, maybe if your family resource has shoes, or you can go to the Goodwill and buy them a pair of shoes, and just kind of provide for them what their parents may not be able to, or may not have the cognitive ability to think about providing for them. These kids need an advocate, not just a teacher, but they need an advocate for their home life too. We kind of have to raise students aside from just teaching them, and that's not the way it was, 50, 75, 100 years ago, but the reality is that's kind of the way it is now. One thing you can do is get involved outside of school. Contact your local politicians and find out, in a polite way, what's being done in my county for these students that have no food on the weekends. Do you have a plan for this? And for your high school kids, I'm a secondary as social studies. That's my content major, so I mostly focus on high school age kids, but let them know that they have rights too. A lot of these kids have jobs, and you can post the Kentucky child labor laws up in your room, just somewhere kind of inconspicuous, but where they can see it and they can know, oh, hey, I'm not supposed to work past 10:30 on a school night. My boss is pushing me around, I go to Kroger probably 4 days a week, and there's one specific student I see there, super nice kid, great academically, super smart, dedicated, and he's there working 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. That's when I go and grocery shop because there's nobody else there. And I keep asking him, what are you doing working this late? Well, I gotta help pay the bills at home, and he's 18, so it's technically legal for him to work that late, but it still bothers me because I know he's got homework to do, and I know he's probably staying up way past midnight to get it done. But, be understanding, kind of let them know, if they don't turn in their homework assignment, okay, well, I get it, you were up late working last night, or you had a project for another teacher due, I get that, as long as it's not an everyday thing or a reoccurring thing, kind of be understanding, be flexible, because they don't live and die by your class. Like, I remember high school, and I remember how difficult it was just for me, and I can't imagine how difficult it would be if I had to work 40 hours a week also. So, but also, don't give them a free ride. I hear this all the time, and it drives me nuts more than anything else. Well, you don't know what their home life is like. Well, that's true. We don't know what their home life is like. And I do have an incredible amount of empathy for these children, but you also don't give them a free ride through life. You can't just say, well, he doesn't have any pencils at home, so he doesn't have to do his homework, or I'll just give him 100 on this test because, he was with his dad this weekend. His dad doesn't make him study. And that's not helping them. Because once they're out of your classroom, the next teacher may not do that, and you're not giving them a good work ethic by not making them do their work and not pushing them. You have to push them to reach their potential, because the reality is, regardless of their socioeconomic status, every child has potential. They may not realize it. You may be the only person who realizes it, but every child really does have potential, and they need to know that they're worth so much more than even what they think they're worth. Okay, so I've made this video incredibly long, but all my sources, the APA, American Psychological Association, and several articles I dug up from the WKU website, and the Kentucky child labor laws. So thank you for listening, and that is a socioeconomic status presentation.